The average American who buys a house at 30, finances 2 cars over their lifetime, carries a credit card balance, and takes out student loans will pay approximately $1,300,000 in interest before they die. Not principal, not the price of the things they bought, the fee charged for the privilege of buying them with money they did not have. $1,300,000. Paid to banks, for nothing, for the use of numbers in a ledger. A farmer named Jacob Fisher in Holmes County, Ohio, is 67 years old. He owns 140 acres of farmland, a house, 2 barns, a workshop, and a complete set of farming equipment. He has raised 8 children. He has never taken out a loan. He has never carried a credit card balance. He has never paid $1 of interest to any bank or financial institution in his life. He is not wealthy by American standards. His income over his working life has been modest by any measure. He is debt-free by design, not by income. The difference between his financial position and the position of an American with equivalent income who used the standard debt-based financial system is not the amount he earned. It is the amount he did not pay to banks. Before I tell you how he did it, I want to tell you about a meeting that took place in November 1910 on Jekyll Island, Georgia, because the system Jacob Fisher has spent his entire life outside of was designed at that meeting, and understanding who designed it and why explains why it is so difficult to escape. 6 men met at a private hunting club on Jekyll Island in November 1910. They arrived separately, using only first names to avoid recognition. The meeting was not publicly disclosed for more than 20 years. The 6 men were Senator Nelson Aldrich, who was the father-in-law of John D. Rockefeller Jr., and the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Frank Vanderlip, president of National City Bank, Henry Davison, senior partner at J.P. Morgan, Charles Norton, president of First National Bank of New York, Paul Warburg, a partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company, who had emigrated from Germany specifically to advocate for an American central bank, and Benjamin Strong, who would become the first governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. They spent 9 days drafting what became the framework for the Federal Reserve Act, which was passed by Congress in December 1913. The Federal Reserve System it created gave private banks, through a complex ownership structure, significant influence over the supply of money in the United States and the interest rates at which that money was lent. I am not here to argue that the Federal Reserve was created for malicious purposes. The men who designed it believed they were solving a genuine problem of financial instability. But the system they created had a specific structural consequence that was understood at the time, and that has been documented in Federal Reserve publications since its founding. The system requires debt to function. The money supply expands through lending. When banks make loans, new money is created. When loans are repaid, that money is extinguished. An economy in which nobody borrowed money would have a contracting money supply and would eventually stop functioning. The Federal Reserve System, by design, requires that Americans collectively remain in debt. This is not a conspiracy. It is a feature. It is documented in introductory economics textbooks. The Federal Reserve's own educational materials explain it. The system requires a certain aggregate level of debt to maintain the money supply at a level that supports economic activity. What the Federal Reserve's educational materials do not emphasize is the individual consequence of this system-level requirement. The system needs people to be in debt. The marketing, the products, the cultural messaging, the credit scores, the 30-year mortgage, the 5-year car loan, the minimum payment on the credit card. All of it is infrastructure, designed to keep individuals in the debt that the system requires. Jacob Fisher is not in that system. The Amish community he belongs to has never been in that system in any meaningful way. Not because they do not understand it, because they looked at it, understood what it was, and decided not to participate. Here is how Jacob Fisher bought 140 acres of land without a bank. He was 23 years old. He had been working on his father's farm since he was 12. He had saved his portion of the farm's income, which the family divided according to a system his grandfather established, for 11 years. He had not bought a car, not paid rent because he lived at home, not purchased anything with borrowed money, and not spent his savings on anything that did not contribute to the land purchase. At 23, he had $38,000 in cash. The land he wanted to buy was listed at $62,000. He went to the seller, an English farmer who was retiring, and made a cash offer of $55,000. The seller accepted. Jacob paid $55,000 for 140 acres in Holmes County, Ohio in 1981. No mortgage, no interest, no monthly payment, no bank. He did not have the full asking price. He had a lower offer in cash that the seller could see and touch and deposit the following morning. The seller did not have to wait 60 days for a bank to approve a mortgage. He did not have to pay a real estate commission from proceeds that disappeared into a financing process. He received $55,000 in cash within a week of shaking Jacob's hand. Cash is worth more than the same number in a financed offer to a motivated seller. Jacob understood this. The Amish community he grew up in had been using this principle for generations. They do not compete with financed buyers on price. They compete on certainty and speed, which are worth a discount that is frequently larger than the interest savings from the transaction alone. I want to tell you about the Amish Church Community Loan System because it is the mechanism that makes the cash purchase possible for community members who have not yet accumulated enough savings on their own. When an Amish family needs capital for a land purchase, a business investment, or a major farm improvement, they can approach the church community for a loan. The loan comes from the savings of other community members, pooled informally and administered through the church structure. The interest rate is typically zero or close to zero. The repayment terms are flexible and based on the borrower's actual capacity rather than a fixed amortization schedule. This system is not a formal financial institution. It has no charter, no regulator, no deposit insurance. It functions on the trust relationships within the community and on a shared understanding that the community's collective financial health depends on its members supporting each other rather than extracting profit from each other. Jacob did not use the community loan system for his land purchase because he had saved enough to buy without it. But several of his children have used it for their own farm purchases and business investments. The interest they have paid is negligible. The financial institutions that would have provided equivalent capital to English buyers of similar properties in the same period have collected hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest from those transactions. I want to address the most common objection to this model directly. People say you cannot save enough cash to buy property in modern America because housing prices have risen faster than wages for decades and the gap cannot be closed through savings. This is accurate for someone trying to buy in a market where they are competing with financed buyers who have access to 100% of the purchase price on borrowed money. In that market, cash savers are priced out because the availability of cheap financing inflates prices beyond what cash savings can reach. The Amish do not compete in that market. They buy agricultural land in rural communities where prices are set by agricultural productivity rather than by speculation, and where the competition is not investment buyers leveraging cheap debt, but working farmers. In those markets, the price-to-income ratios are different, and the gap between savings and purchase price is closable within a decade of disciplined saving. This does not mean the Amish model translates directly to every American context. It does not. Someone who needs to live near a major city for work is in a different housing market than Holmes County, Ohio. But the principle is transferable, even when the specific application is not. The principle is that every dollar of interest paid to a bank is a dollar that does not exist in your household. Over a 30-year mortgage on a $400,000 house at 6% interest, the total interest payment is approximately $460,000. The house cost $400,000. You paid $460,000 extra for the privilege of having it now instead of later. The bank received $460,000 for creating the loan entry in a ledger. Jacob Fisher's children understand this number. They were raised to understand it. When the oldest son, now 41, bought his own farm at 27, he bought it with cash saved over 8 years of working and living frugally. His English neighbor bought a comparable property the same year with a 30-year mortgage. Jacob's son has paid zero in interest over 14 years. His neighbor has paid approximately $200,000 in interest and still has 16 years of payments remaining. The neighbor is not unintelligent. He was not given worse advice. He was given the standard advice of the standard financial system, which is to borrow what you need now and pay for it over time. Jacob's son was given different advice, which is to earn what you need first and pay for it once. The difference in outcome between those two pieces of advice, applied consistently over a lifetime, is approximately the $1,300,000 I mentioned at the opening of this video. I want to give you something practical now. Not a prescription for living as the Amish live, which is not available to most people in most circumstances. A framework for identifying where the debt-based system is extracting the most value from your specific situation, and where the Amish principle of paying for things once is most achievable. Credit card interest is the highest priority target. The average American household carrying a credit card balance pays between 18 and 24% annual interest on that balance. There is no investment available to most people that returns 18 to 24% reliably. Eliminating a credit card balance is the highest return financial action available to anyone carrying one. Jacob Fisher has never paid 18% interest on anything. The Amish community treats credit card use the same way it treats any other form of debt it cannot justify. It does not use it. The car loan is the second priority. The average American finances 3 to 4 vehicles over their working life. At current interest rates and loan durations, the total interest paid on vehicle financing over a working lifetime is between $40,000 and $80,000 for a typical household. The Amish buy vehicles with cash, which means they buy older vehicles with cash, which means they maintain vehicles longer than the American average, which means their per-year cost of transportation is significantly lower than the financed new vehicle model. Jacob Fisher has driven the same 1998 truck for 27 years. He has repaired it when it needed repair. The total cost of operating that truck, purchase price plus all repairs plus fuel over 27 years, is less than the purchase price of a new truck. The mortgage is the largest and least addressable of the three. For most Americans, the gap between savings and property prices in the markets where they need to live is not closable in the way it is for an Amish farmer in Holmes County. But the principle of reducing the duration of the mortgage, of making additional principal payments when possible, of buying less house at a lower price point rather than more house at the maximum the bank will finance, reduces the total interest extraction significantly without requiring a wholesale adoption of the Amish model. The bank will approve you for as much loan as its risk models allow. That number is not the number you should borrow. It is the number beyond which the bank's risk of non-payment exceeds its appetite. It is the maximum extraction point, not the recommendation. Jacob Fisher's son, when he advises his own children on money, says what his father said to him. The bank's job is to make money from your need. Your job is to need it less. That sentence contains everything I've been trying to say in this video. The system is not your adversary in a dramatic sense. It is simply a mechanism that extracts value from need. The less you need it, the less it extracts. The Amish have been reducing their need for it since before most of the institutions in the system existed. The Federal Reserve was established in 1913. The Amish community in Holmes County has been operating a mutual aid financial system since the early 19th century. The community loan system predates the Federal Reserve by nearly 100 years. It will likely outlast it. I want to go deeper on the Amish financial education system because the knowledge Jacob Fisher has is not innate. It was transmitted, deliberately and specifically, from a community that understood what happens to people who do not have it. The Amish practice of financial education begins early. Jacob told me that by the age of 10, every child in his community understood the concept of interest in concrete terms, not as a financial abstraction, as a physical demonstration. His father explained it this way. If you give a neighbor 10 bushels of corn today and he agrees to give you back 11 bushels next harvest, that extra bushel is interest. That is what happens when you borrow. You agree to give back more than you received. Now imagine doing that with your house. Imagine agreeing to give back twice the value of your house, spread across 30 years of your working life. Would you make that agreement if you could see all the bushels at once? Most people who take out a 30-year mortgage cannot see all the bushels at once. The monthly payment is manageable. The aggregate is staggering. The mortgage disclosure document that shows total interest paid over the life of the loan is signed at closing alongside 40 other documents and processed without the weight it deserves. Jacob's father made him see the bushels, not metaphorically. He made him calculate the total interest on a hypothetical 30-year mortgage when Jacob was 12 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with a pencil and a piece of paper. 7th grade arithmetic. Total interest on a $100,000 loan at 8% over 30 years. Jacob worked it out to approximately $164,000. He told me he sat looking at that number for a long time. Then his father said, "That is what they take if you let them. And if you take a bigger loan, they take proportionally more. And if you do it again for a car, and again for something else, and you carry a balance on the card, the total across your lifetime is more than most people earn in a decade of work." Jacob never forgot the exercise. He has done it with each of his 8 children. Each of them has done it with their own children. The knowledge transmits the same way all Amish knowledge transmits. Through direct demonstration, early, in terms that are concrete enough to be felt rather than just understood. The American financial education system does not do this. High school financial literacy courses, where they exist, cover the mechanics of budgeting and the basics of compound interest. They do not sit a 12-year-old down with a pencil and make them calculate the total extraction across a lifetime of standard debt use, and then ask them if they would willingly agree to that extraction if they could see it all at once. Jacob Fisher's father did that, and Jacob Fisher has never paid $1 of interest to any bank. I want to tell you about one more financial practice that the Amish community uses that has no equivalent in mainstream American financial advice. They do not diversify into markets. They do not understand. American financial advisors universally recommend investment in diversified stock and bond portfolios as the primary vehicle for long-term wealth building. The Amish largely do not do this. They invest in land, in buildings, in farming equipment, in businesses they operate and understand, and in the community loan system that provides capital to neighbors and relatives. These are illiquid investments. They cannot be sold in an afternoon. They cannot be managed through an app. They require personal knowledge of the specific assets involved. The returns, measured in financial terms, are lower than the stock market average in most decades. Jacob Fisher has not captured the gains of the bull market of the 1990s or the technology stock appreciation of the 2000s and 2010s. His investment returns, if measured against index fund performance, underperform. But his investments have never gone to zero. His land is still land. His buildings are still standing. His equipment still works. His community relationships still function. In the financial crises of 2001 and 2008, when diversified portfolios lost 30 to 50% of their value in months, Jacob Fisher's net worth did not change. This is a different definition of financial security than the one the investment industry promotes. The investment industry promotes growth. Jacob's community promotes stability. Growth captures more value in good times. Stability loses less in bad times. Over a lifetime that includes both good times and bad times, the difference in outcomes depends on timing in ways that neither side can control. What Jacob controls is this. He owns his land and his house outright. He owes nothing to any bank. He cannot be foreclosed. He cannot be margin called. He cannot be evicted. The worst financial crisis in a century cannot take his farm from him because there is no lender who has a claim on it. The American households that lost their homes in 2008 had mortgages. Jacob Fisher could not have lost his farm in 2008 because his farm had no mortgage. The financial crisis that destroyed the net worth of millions of Americans who had followed standard financial advice did not touch him. That is what debt-free living produces in a crisis, not growth, not opportunity, immunity. One more thing before I give you the practical summary. The Jekyll Island meeting of 1910 produced a banking system that has been enormously productive for the American economy in aggregate. I am not arguing that it should not have been created. I am observing that its creation produced a structural requirement for aggregate indebtedness that has been marketed to individual Americans as personal financial normalcy for over a century. The Amish community has operated outside that normalcy for the entire century. The system has existed, not because they are contrarian, Not because they are anti-American, because they looked at the system, calculated the cost, and decided the cost was too high for what it delivered. Jacob Fisher, at 67, owns everything he lives in and everything he works with. He owes nothing to anyone. He has never paid $1,300,000 in interest to anyone. He has simply been doing the math since he was 12 years old and acting accordingly. I want to give you the specific numbers that Jacob Fisher's life produces, because abstract principles are less convincing than arithmetic. Jacob bought his land at 23 for $55,000 in cash. An English buyer purchasing comparable land in the same year with a 30-year mortgage at the prevailing 1981 rate of 16% would have paid approximately $250,000 in interest alone over the life of that mortgage, for a total cost of over $300,000 for land that Jacob paid $55,000 for. Jacob built his house over 2 years using his own labor and the labor of his community, a barn-raising equivalent for house construction. Materials cost approximately $18,000. An equivalent English buyer financing the construction of a comparable house in 1983 would have paid approximately $80,000 to $90,000 for the house, then another $60,000 to $70,000 in mortgage interest over 30 years. Jacob has driven the same truck for 27 years. In that time, a typical American household finances 4 to 5 vehicles. At current average loan terms and interest rates, the interest paid on those vehicle loans is between $20,000 and $40,000. Jacob has paid zero. Jacob has never carried a credit card balance. An American household carrying the average credit card balance of $8,000 at 20% interest for 30 years, making minimum payments, pays approximately $14,000 per year in interest, while the balance barely moves. Over 3 decades, the total interest paid on that balance exceeds the original debt many times over. The specific numbers for Jacob Fisher across his adult life from age 23 to 67, 44 years, compared to an American contemporary with equivalent income using standard debt instruments, are approximately as follows. Jacob paid in total interest across all categories over 44 years, $0. His American contemporary paid, conservatively, mortgage interest approximately $250,000, vehicle loan interest approximately $50,000, credit card interest approximately $40,000. Total, approximately $340,000. That $340,000, if invested rather than paid to banks, compounding at a modest rate over 44 years, would be worth significantly more than its nominal value. The opportunity cost of the interest payments, counting lost investment returns, pushes the true lifetime differential well past $1 million. Jacob Fisher does not have $1 million in savings. He has a farm that is worth more than it cost him, a house he owns outright, and no obligations to anyone. He is not wealthy by American standards. He is free from debt by design. The $1 million is what his American contemporary does not have. It is the negative space in the financial life of anyone who has spent a working lifetime in the standard debt-based system. That is the number I want you to think about. Not Jacob's assets, the absence in yours. Tell me in the comments your current total monthly debt payments. Mortgage, car, credit cards, student loans, everything. Add them up and put the number in the comments. I want to show this audience what the aggregate looks like, because most people have never added up every debt payment they make in a month and seen the total as a single number. Seeing it as a single number changes something. Subscribe and hit the bell. Next week, I'm covering the Amish Natural Medicine Cabinet. The Flexner Report of 1910, funded by the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations, resulted in the closure of most American medical schools that taught botanical medicine. Before 1910, every American household knew how to treat the 12 most common illnesses without a pharmacy. I found the 1908 edition of King's American Dispensatory. What it contains will change how you think about what is growing in your yard right now. Stay with me. There is more.